Welcome back, everybody. Romney Navarro again. I promised you another part to this series, and here it is. We're talking collateral, the first of the 5 C's. Now we're going to get a little bit more technical than the first video because we're going to tell you a little bit about what the C that we're referring to in the 5 C's of underwriting means, why it's important, what and how we measure it. And then maybe, just maybe, if we have enough time, we'll have a little bonus video and tell you how generally it's being measured in the marketplace today, so you know how to calibrate your presentation to your bankers. But before we get into all that, let's talk about collateral. Look, I always call collateral the granddaddy of them all. It is the most important of the 5 C's. Credit's incredibly important. So is cash. So is they're all important. But the most important is collateral, because simply put, collateral is always going to be either yes or no. Okay? Very easy to say yes to one thing and no to another thing if you understand exactly, what the appetite of the lender for collateral is. Let me describe or maybe define collateral. Collateral is the asset that you will be borrowing against. Simply put, it is the thing that you're getting a loan against. So the collateral should always or will always be worth more than the loan that you're borrowing. Okay? No banker, at least not that I know of, certainly not pre-Great Recession, no banker is lending greater than the collateral amount on any piece of collateral. So you need to be able to pledge something that has a great amount of value to obtain the highest possible loan amount. It's funny, when I think of collateral, I always think about how I got into this business. And how I got into this business, I've got a history in lending and finance and real estate, for that matter. And as I mentioned in the prior video, I became a private lender during the Great Recession. It was 2008, April 2008, I became a private lender. September, October, November was kind of the beginning of the end, if you guys recall. Well, I remember somewhere in that time period, my very first deal was so juicy. I stood to make so much money. I remember just kind of counting the cash. If you've never done that, then you'll do it soon. You get a deal and you know how much money you're going to make and you just can't wait. And I remember I was a new father. My wife had another child on the way. So we were expecting all these great things. And I was just looking to make a little bit of money, just candidly. I was just looking to earn some cash to provide for my family. And I had this deal. It was probably about a $12 million deal. Hindsight being 2020, it's probably a $100 million deal today. Currently, if you guys are familiar with Austin, Texas, we're one of the more vibrant, fastest growing markets in the country and have been for the last 20 years, and it continues to outpace itself. So this particular piece of real estate was right across from where Elon Musk and the Tesla headquarters is. Elon Musk is building the new Tesla headquarters, where they're manufacturing the Cybertruck. Anyway, it was a $10 million deal, $12 million deal, probably worth $150 million today. That part doesn't matter. The part that matters is I was going to get paid on that deal. And I just thought it was the greatest thing ever because the guy owed like $1 million on it. He needed a little bit of loan. I needed to, give him, I'll collect some points on it and we're going to be fine. Well, as it turns out, I went to everybody in town, literally everybody that I'd ever heard of, Googled and or had in my Rolodex. And everybody told me, oh man, this looks great, but no. And the reason this got me into the private lending space is because, frankly, I actually presented it to a company called Streamline Funding back in 2008. And they're like, this is a great deal, but we don't care. However, would you like a job? And that's kind of how, 12, 13 years later, this is where we're at today. Moral of the story is I was trying to give somebody something that they didn't want. And the collateral is exactly that. I was giving them a piece of raw land. When everybody that I was talking to says, hey, that's a great looking deal, but it's not my appetite. My appetite is a single family home. So it's really easy to get caught up in that juicy deal. But if your banker doesn't necessarily care for or have an interest in the collateral, it's not going to get done. So be very, very careful with what you're presenting to them. Generally speaking, I suggest to my clients to understand what exactly is the collateral that your banker, your finance partner, your lender wants. And then start dialing it in from there. I'll give you a little hint. Me personally, I'm a construction lender. Okay. I do construction loans for minor renovation projects, like, $50,000 rehabs, to major construction projects, $10 million multifamily projects. That's the spectrum of construction that I lend. The collateral type, however, is always residential. It's always got to have a bed to rest your head at night. It's going to be a single family home, a duplex, a threeplex, a 10plex, a 20, 30, 50, 100 unit multifamily, but it's always a residential, has a residential component. If somebody approached me with, say, a self-storage, I'm going to pass. I don't have an interest in it. Okay. And it's a great deal, but somebody does have the interest. So the moral of this entire story is understand your financial partner's collateral. The second part that I really want you to take, this is more of a pro tip that I want to give you. This is just something to think through, just kind of keep in your back pocket, because you're going to be making a lot of relationships as you enter the industry. Be very careful. How do I say this delicately? Just be very careful trying to overconvince. When somebody tries to convince me after 1 and 2 no's, now I'm starting to kind of get my guard up and our relationship changes. I think that's true with bankers who are always protecting the vault. You have to understand that. What they're trying to do is make sure they're making good investments and getting their money back. When somebody's trying to say, hey, man, how about we do it like this? Hey, man, how about we do it like this? Hey, it's like, woof. You have to put up a big kind of guardrail there that you can't necessarily get over. So be very careful of trying to convince, because they see through that and they see it and they associate it not so much with salesmanship or drive or hunger, but with potentially a character flaw or something that, this person's trying to get one over on me. So be very, very mindful of that. As we talk about collateral, a couple of other things to take into consideration that lenders look for, but you should absolutely be looking for, is a type. I already mentioned single family, multifamily. That's what I like. There's some guy down the street that likes hotels, flagged, unflagged, you name it. Some guy likes gas stations. Some guy likes retail. Everybody's going to have their appetite. In the real estate investing space, 90% of the people are really going to like residential property. Okay. Inside of that 90% of the people, about 75 to 100% are going to like simple renovations. Okay. Inside of that 100%, about 10 to 25% of us really love construction. So you got to just kind of dial in who you're talking to, and that's where you're going to place the collateral. So type. Next thing is exit. How are you going to pay this property off? Every private lender, certainly that I've ever met in my tenure, every private lender likes a short-term loan because they're making investments. They're making short-term investments, not long-term investments. They're not betting on appreciation. They're betting on you, the operator. So what is the exit strategy? If your exit strategy is to refinance, great. Is it a property that can be refinanced? If your exit strategy is to sell, great. Is it a property that can sell? Give you a brief story. If you're going to sell a 25,000 square foot house out in the country, the likelihood of that property selling quickly is slim to none. If you're going to be selling an 1,800 square foot property somewhere in the city limits, like in a neighborhood where there's a lot and block kind of association already, the likelihood of that property selling quickly is a lot greater than the 25,000 square foot rural property. So the exit strategy needs to make sense. In a short-term loan, a long-term exit strategy isn't as powerful as a short-term exit strategy. And then finally, ROI. We're all in this to make money. As a lender, we charge interest rate, 7, 8, 9, 10% interest rate. We charge points, a percentage of the loan amount, 1, 2, 3 points, whatever it may be. I've heard of guys doing 5 points out there. As an investor, you're in it to make a profit. If you're going to rent it, you need to make sure you've got a positive cash flow. And if you're going to sell it, you need to make sure your investment is grown. So if you invest $10,000, you don't receive $8,000. That's a terrible investment. If you invest $10,000, we as lenders, as your capital partners, want to see you earn. My criteria is typically no less than 30%. We pride ourselves, generally speaking, in the lenders that work with us get the best deals, because we won't do a deal where they receive less than 30% return on their investment. What that means is if they invest $100,000, they're penciled out to get at least $130,000 back. So an ROI is another thing that lenders and capital partners look at, and something you should be considering too. So enough on collateral. I think this one was good, but I do think there's a lot more to kind of complete the picture. Next up, we're going to be talking about credit. Sometimes everybody's favorite, because it's that thing that every first-time investor seems to think they could get into this industry without. Not necessarily true, and we will debunk that next.